I first saw the ad on a chilly January morning. I'd been saving for months, desperate to score tickets to the Super Bowl without bankrupting myself. Scrolling aimlessly through Craigslist, I stumbled on a post that seemed too good to be true. 2 Super Bowl tickets. Face value. No scams. My heart leaped. Face value was still a lot, but it was far cheaper than the outrageous prices I'd seen on official ticket sites. I clicked on the listing, half expecting it to be an obvious hoax. Instead, it was short and direct, claiming the seller was a police officer, needing to offload a pair of tickets last minute. He left a phone number. Excited, I dialed immediately. The man who answered introduced himself as Officer Burns. He spoke calmly, with a quiet confidence. He explained that he'd originally bought the tickets for himself and his wife, but work obligations meant he had to miss the game. My internal alarms didn't so much as twitch. Why would they? He sounded exactly like you'd expect a seasoned cop to sound. I tried to suggest meeting in front of a police station in my neighborhood to finalize the sale. That's when I sensed a slight shift in his tone. It was subtle, so subtle that I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. He hesitated, then chuckled. "I'm actually on call in a different precinct," he said. "I won't have time to drive to your station." He proposed meeting at a location just outside of town. We'd exchange the money for the tickets. I'd always believed it was safer to meet in front of a station, but he insisted he was a cop himself. So what could go wrong? Despite my nagging doubts, I agreed. In the back of my mind, I kept telling myself, he's in law enforcement. He wouldn't risk his career over a scam. I was too blinded by the lure of cheap Super Bowl tickets to see the warning signs. That same afternoon, I hopped in my car and followed the directions he'd sent. His instructions led me out of the city, beyond the suburbs, down winding roads lined with pine trees drooping under the weight of winter snow. Light flurries danced against my windshield, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, the landscape turned dark and foreboding. The GPS indicated I was close, but there was no sign of any police station, no sign of any building for that matter, just a deserted stretch of road. Eventually, I spotted a lone house at the end of a gravel driveway. Its windows were dark, the porch light flickering. It looked abandoned, or at least neglected. I parked, thinking maybe this was an undercover location, or the man's personal property. Snow crunched underfoot as I stepped out and approached. My breath fogged the air. The door creaked open before I could knock, and there stood a tall, broad-shouldered figure with a black hoodie pulled tight. I mumbled a greeting, telling him I was here to see Officer Burns. The figure didn't respond, just offered a quick, unsettling smile. Then he raised a rag to my face. A strong chemical smell overwhelmed me. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. My vision blurred and my body collapsed. When I regained consciousness, I was in complete darkness. My head throbbed, and my arms and legs felt bound by rope. A damp, musty smell filled my nostrils. My tongue felt like cotton, and each breath was a struggle. I remembered the phone call, the tickets, the strange house. Fear flooded me as I realized I'd walked straight into a trap. I didn't know if hours had passed or days. My mind churned with questions. Where am I? Who is this man? Am I going to die here? Just as panic threatened to consume me, I heard a noise, a feeble voice from somewhere in the darkness. "Hello?" it rasped. Heart pounding, I whispered, "Yes, I'm here." The voice belonged to another victim. She sounded weak, barely able to speak. We exchanged hushed words, determined not to draw attention from our captor. She'd been there for days, maybe longer. She spoke of starvation, of harrowing encounters, of a man who took pleasure in tormenting his prisoners. I felt my stomach twist. We had to get out. Carefully, I tested the ropes binding my wrists. They were tight, but age or repeated use must have worn them thin. I wiggled, twisted, tugged, ignoring the friction burns on my skin. After several excruciating minutes, the ropes frayed enough for me to slip one hand free. My heart hammered so loud I was sure the sound would give me away. Once my hand was loose, it was easier to untie the rest. The other victim, a young woman whose name I learned was Tina, was less mobile, so I helped loosen her bonds. She could barely stand, so I propped her up. Feeling along the walls, my fingertips grazed something cold and rough, wooden boards. High above, I traced the outline of a window, boarded shut. I tried pushing, but it didn't budge. Desperate, I looked around in the darkness for anything that could be used as a tool or weapon. There wasn't much. A broken chair, a few discarded scraps of metal. My best bet, I decided, was to use my body weight, so I braced my shoulder against the boards and shoved. The wood groaned but held firm. I slammed again, harder this time, ignoring the shooting pain in my arm. With a final heave, the board cracked, and a gust of freezing winter air flooded in. Tina and I scrambled toward the opening. The sudden noise must have alerted the man, because I heard heavy footsteps pounding above us. My mind raced. We had only seconds. The window was about head height, blocked by jagged wood. I yanked at the loose planks, ignoring the splinters that dug into my hands. Then a door crashed open behind us. Light from a flashlight beam swept the room, and in it I saw the looming shape of our captor. He hissed some curse under his breath as he stormed toward us. My pulse thundered in my ears, but adrenaline coursed through me. I heaved one last plank off the window, and frigid wind blasted my face. Outside, I could see swirling snow. The night was pitch black. I crawled through the splintered frame, grabbing Tina's arm to pull her after me. Just as I planted my feet outside, a strong hand seized my shoulder. I twisted, slipping in the snow and falling on my back. The killer lunged, brandishing something metal, a knife maybe. My mind screamed for a weapon. I scanned the snowy yard for anything I could use. Then I saw them. Long icicles hanging from the sagging gutter, gleaming under the faint moonlight. In one swift motion, I snapped an icicle off the gutter. He came at me, swinging the knife, but his foot slipped on the ice. I took my chance. With every ounce of willpower, I drove the icicle into his face. The shriek that tore from his lips chilled my blood. He stumbled back, clutching his eye, the icicle protruding at a sickening angle. For a moment, he flailed, then dropped to his knees. I grabbed the keys that jangled at his belt and hurried to help Tina. She was still trying to climb through the busted window, shaking violently from cold and fear. As I aided her out, I heard him groaning behind me, staggering. Every instinct told me he might rise at any second. My breath came in ragged gasps. The keys in my hand had to belong to his vehicle, or perhaps to a locked door inside the house. We didn't have time to figure it out calmly. Tina and I half ran, half stumbled around the side of the house, searching for anything drivable. Sure enough, an old pickup truck sat behind a dilapidated barn. The door was unlocked. My trembling hands tried 3 keys before the engine finally roared to life. Slamming the gear into drive, we sped away down the snow-covered road, tears of relief streaming down my face. I reached the nearest town and burst into the police station, disoriented and frantic. The officers listened, wide-eyed as I recounted every detail in a blur of words. They wasted no time organizing a small convoy to race back to that rural house. They told us to stay behind and rest, but we insisted on following at a safe distance, desperate to see that monster behind bars. When the police finally entered the rundown property, the place was ominously silent. They found the dark, empty basement room, the broken window, and blood in the snow outside. But no sign of the killer, no fresh footprints leading away, no hints to where he might have gone. Even now, as I sit in my living room typing this, I feel ice coursing through my veins. I've replayed the night countless times in my mind, struggling with the knowledge that he's still out there. Sometimes I stare at the tickets, those two worthless, blood-soaked slips of paper I found in the truck, and ask myself, was it worth it? My story ends with me alive but haunted. Every small noise at night sets my nerves on edge. Every stranger I pass on the street wears the shadow of that man's face. Because somewhere in this world, a killer masquerading as a police officer is roaming free, waiting for his next victim. And I know, with a terrible certainty, that he's already hunting again.